man in the middle of the raid that killed Breonna Taylor will likely avoid prison time.
Even though Ja-Marcus-Glover pleaded guilty to a slew of drug-related charges, WDRB's Sarah Sidery tells us why he could walk free and leave Louisville altogether. Sarah?
Gil and Fallon, those are the terms of a plea deal Glover cut with prosecutors. He could get probation and be allowed to move to Mississippi with some strings attached. Ja-Marcus-Glover was a drug dealer targeted by police in a series of raids back in March 2020. LMPD raided his house the same night they raided Breonna Taylor's apartment. He was Taylor's ex-boyfriend, and the two remained friends. During phone calls Glover made in jail last year, he questioned why police were at her apartment in the first place.
Why would you execute a warrant in Breehouse?
LMPD said it raided Taylor's apartment because they thought she was holding Glover's drug money. Police shot and killed her during the raid, but officers never found anything illegal inside her apartment. Glover said he had spoken to Taylor hours before she was killed.
Yeah, man, we had text that day, though, big girl. That's the thing. We text that day like that. On my life, she texted me like, when the snow coming in for my time. So I know the message. Boom, 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 boom. You see me sending the message. I'm sending everything to her, but we on good terms to where she makes sure she get up.
Last week, Glover pleaded guilty to a long list of drug trafficking and possession charges. The recommended sentence was for 8 years, but prosecutors agreed to probation and to let Glover move to Mississippi. But in order to do that, he'll have to give up everything police took in the raids, including money and cars. This isn't Glover's first plea deal connected to this case. Last year, prosecutors offered him one on the condition that he said Breonna Taylor was part of a drug operation. Glover refused. This time around, Taylor is not mentioned in any of his plea documents. And 2 other judges will have to sign off on the deal. Those sentencing hearings are scheduled for next month. Sarah Sidery, WDRB News.
You know, let's face it, the Breonna Taylor case has been botched from the beginning. The police lied to get the warrant. They did not announce themselves when they got there. They tried to get an African man to say he heard them announce themselves when all the other neighbors said they didn't hear anything. And then he later came out and said the police threatened him. That's the only reason why he said it, but he didn't hear no announcement either. But he did not admit that until weeks later. They shot up the neighbor's apartment above her. That was the only person they seemed to be concerned about. You know, Daniel Cameron would not let Breonna Taylor to this very day have her day in court. I mean, they killed this woman and then they tried to arrest her boyfriend, talking about attempted murder on a cop. Nobody even knew they were cops. He thought they were being burglarized. I mean, it's just been a disaster from day one. So now, ladies and gentlemen, this is WDRB.com, October 18th, 2021. Prosecutors recommend probation for suspect at center of raid that killed Breonna Taylor. Now, remember, the police also tried to get the post office general to lie and say packages with drugs were being delivered to Breonna Taylor's apartment, and he would not go along with that. So why would they keep this man in jail? You done botched the entire case. The police did this. They botched this whole case. So there were never any packages at Breonna Taylor's apartment for Ja-Marcus-Glover. It just was not there. Okay. They were trying to get him, but they raided an apartment that had no drugs in it. Ooh, they did a bad job on this one. So prosecutors are recommending probation. Well, what other choice do they really have? I don't think they have a choice in this. For drug dealer Ja-Marcus-Glover, the focus of a series of Louisville police raids, including one on March 13th, 2020, in which officers shot and killed Breonna Taylor. Last week, Glover pled guilty over 2 days in Jefferson Circuit Court to a litany of crimes, mostly drug trafficking and possession. with a total recommendation of sentence of 8 years in prison. However, as part of the deal, the Jefferson Commonwealth Attorney's Office recommended a sentence of probation and allow Glover to move to Mississippi. The only charge Glover pled guilty involving the March 13th, 2020 raid was drug trafficking. According to court records, the recommended sentence for that conviction is 5 years to run concurrently with a total of 8 years. So he's going to be on probation that long. Several other charges, including engaging in organized crime, was dismissed. Glover, who is currently not in jail, agreed to forfeit everything seized by police, civil forfeiture. So he's got to relinquish everything to them, which is civil forfeiture, for his freedom. Although he's not going to jail, he's just being put on probation. That's what they're talking about. So he's got to forfeit money and vehicles that were seized by the police. I believe he was living in an apartment, so there's no property for them to seize. But what they could seize, that's what they took. The guilty pleas would resolve all of Glover's serious pending cases in Louisville. Again, they botched this case up so bad, they pretty much gotta let him go. They really do. What if they put him in jail on top of everything they botched up? It just looks bad. You done effed up the case. This is thanks to the police. They've effed up this entire case. Okay. 2 Jefferson Circuit judges must approve the plea deals and sentencing scheduled for November 22nd and November 30th. Defense attorney Paul Mullins, who represents Glover, said he could not comment on the case until after the sentencing. So Taylor's family is, of course, they settled for a $12 million wrongful death lawsuit. Said the plea deal validates that Glover was not a drug kingpin, requiring several late night raids by police. Now, it's said, ladies and gentlemen, they're just seizing money and his vehicles. It doesn't say anything about drugs. It doesn't say one thing about drugs. Like, we're seizing the drugs, the money in the vehicle. They're only saying money and vehicles. You know what that tells me? When they got to his place, they didn't find no drugs there either. If they did, you would have heard about it. You notice how they're omitting any drugs found in his apartment? Because I don't believe there was any. They didn't find none at Breonna Taylor's apartment, and they did not find anything at Ja-Marcus Glover's apartment either. Because it is not mentioned at all. There was a large-scale aggressive police operation that was promoted internally as going after Louisville's most violent criminals. I don't hardly believe Ja-Marcus is Louisville's most violent criminal. Man, you can miss me with that. I don't believe that. It really looks like they're going to low to mid-level drug dealers to take down a house the city wanted. Mm-mm-mm. So anyway, the raids were the end result of a land grab by the city using officers to target and remove people and homes in the Russell neighborhood. So they wanted that area. They wanted to seize that area and try to run as many people out of that area as possible that Breonna Taylor was in. You see how dirty this whole system is? Mm-mm-mm. And the family's attorney is saying this is to revitalize West Louisville with a large real estate development project. So they're raiding people to run them out of that area for a large real estate deal. Sound like the police are the biggest criminals in this whole case. Jefferson Commonwealth attorney, First Assistant Erwin Roberts, said he could not talk about the specifics of the plea agreement until the sentencing. We cannot speak freely right now, as we might after he is sentenced, Roberts said in an interview. It took some doing to get to this point, to get the case resolved. They really need to be resolved. Mm-mm-mm. In the summer of 2020, Glover was offered a plea deal if he would say that Taylor was a member of his organized crime syndicate, records show. As part of the offer, Glover was to acknowledge that over a period of time, he and several co defendants, including Taylor, engaged in organized crime by trafficking large amount of drugs into Louisville community. Yeah, drugs that they were not able to find in either location. Worst police department ever. Glover, a convicted felon, a history of drug trafficking, turned down the plea offer. It would have resulted in a possible 10-year prison sentence on charges of criminal syndication, drug trafficking, and gun charges. So they offered him a plea deal, ladies and gentlemen, right away. Okay, so Taylor was killed March 13th. And by the summer, they were offering Jamarcus-Glover a plea deal. Now, why would the police do that if you are 100% sure you had this drug dealer? They didn't find drugs. They didn't even find drugs where he was. I know where this is going. I know exactly where it's going. And what does his history got to do with what happened that night and Breonna Taylor getting killed? So Taylor lived about 10 miles away from Glover in an apartment on Springfield Drive. So they lived 10 miles away from each other. Ladies and gentlemen, this whole case is a disgrace. And Daniel Cameron, I hope they put you in the hottest part of the lake of fire. That is exactly where you deserve to be. And as far as this police department, this probably is by far one of the worst police jobs ever. They really botched this one up. You can thank the police department for this whole thing. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.